Breaking news, France is falling. For decades it lived off Africa's resources and power. But now, that empire is crumbling before our eyes. In just months, 14 African countries have kicked France out. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali and Chad were the first to end military deals and chase out French troops. Then Ivory Coast and Senegal followed, closing French bases, sending soldiers home and cutting ties. Chad has ripped up its defense pact. Ivory Coast is removing 600 French soldiers, and Senegal will close its last French base before the end of 2025. This is more than troops leaving, it's France's lifeline snapping. For years, Paris depended on Africa for minerals, for military power, for survival. Without Africa, France is collapsing under its own weight, its economy sinking, its influence gone. What we are witnessing is history. Africa rising, France falling. The world will never be the same again.
The collapse of France is now unfolding on a large scale, with events escalating quickly. After the French Prime Minister lost a vote of no confidence, massive protests erupted across the country on September 10th. Demonstrations have spread all over France, and the government appears to be crumbling under the weight of political instability. This situation is drawing comparisons to Nepal, where governments often face turmoil when they fail to meet public expectations. Before being ousted, the Prime Minister himself warned that removing him would not solve the deeper issues France faces. He suggested that the nation's struggles go beyond leadership and are tied to the way resources have been managed. Reports now reveal that France relied heavily on African resources, particularly from the Sahel states, instead of building sustainable development from within. Uranium from Niger played a crucial role in powering Paris, keeping the city's lights on while draining Africa's natural wealth. With France now expelled from much of Africa, the consequences are becoming dire. Reports claim Paris has only a few days before electricity shortages hit, as the steady flow of uranium has been cut off. Without this lifeline, the nation faces the risk of widespread blackouts and further economic collapse. The once strong French state now appears vulnerable, and many believe this is just the beginning of a much larger breakdown.
France, the one-time symbol of Western wealth, is in a tailspin. Its debt sits at 3.3 trillion euros. The annual interest? More than 60 billion, larger than the entire GDP of dozens of African countries combined. And the clock keeps running. Every second, another 5,000 euros piles on. To stop the bleeding, France's leaders want to axe two public holidays, Easter Monday and Victory Day, forcing extra workdays to scrape together 4.5 billion euros. But the streets are speaking. Across France, strikes are erupting. Transport halted, hospitals under pressure, schools locked down. Anger is boiling over, pensions frozen, healthcare budgets slashed by 5 billion euros. Meanwhile, the privileged stay comfortable. Take the Economic, Social and Environmental Council. Its members enjoy 121,000 euro salaries, 54 paid days off, and lavish perks, all on taxpayer money. This isn't a crisis of poverty, it's a crisis of priorities. And while its citizens protest, France is turning outward, trying to rebuild influence in Africa. But the script has flipped. Burkina Faso no longer bows, it stands firm. And for the first time in history, France isn't giving orders, it's asking for the meeting. Chapter 2 begins. Burkina Faso has risen. Not long ago, the country was dismissed as a failed state. Foreign troops roamed its streets, terrorists struck at will, and its economy leaned heavily on aid. That started to change in 2022, when Captain Ibrahim Traoré took the helm. With fearless resolve, Captain Ibrahim Traoré sent a clear signal. Burkina Faso would no longer serve anyone else's agenda. French troops were sent home. Lopsided foreign contracts were torn up. National resources and energy were redirected towards self-reliance and true sovereignty. Traoré stopped looking to Paris for answers. He turned to his own people. He pushed forward bold agricultural programs to secure food independence, poured investment into local mining and manufacturing, and sparked a movement to restore national pride. Security forces, once trained and armed by outsiders, are now equipped and led from within, protecting their land under their own command. This shift isn't symbolic, it runs deep. The impact? A safer nation, a growing economy, and a surge of pride that can be felt in every village and city. Burkina Faso no longer waits for handouts. It walks into negotiations as an equal, or not at all. What's happening here isn't limited to government policies. It's a mindset, a conviction that Africans can lead, build, defend, and prosper without colonial shadows looming overhead. Traoré has delivered more than reforms. He's delivered belief. And that belief is sending shockwaves far beyond West Africa. The message is clear. Africa is capable. Africa is rising. Chapter 3. France comes knocking. In a stunning turn of history, the former powerhouse of France is now the one approaching Africa with open hands, seeking a way back in. As its economy wobbles, France has reportedly made overtures to Burkina Faso and other Francophone nations, proposing a new kind of partnership. Gone are the airs of superiority. What you see now is economic desperation. Even President Emmanuel Macron, once known for dismissive tones toward African grievances, is speaking in terms of cooperation and respect. But across Africa, the question lingers. Is this sincere reform, or a calculated move to regain what was lost? After generations of resource plunder and political meddling, trust doesn't return overnight. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré see France's outreach for what it is: survival, not charity. The system France built, propped up for decades by African labor and minerals, is cracking apart. And now, the old empire wants back at the table. Yet Africa holds the cards. The continent is more united, more assertive, more aware than ever. The colonizer no longer commands fear, and certainly doesn't command necessity. Traoré's answer leaves no room for misinterpretation. Any future partnership must stand on respect, honesty, and dignity.
Welcome to Find the Dot. Today we are driving into a story that mainstream won't fully tell you. France, once the symbol of Western wealth, now drawing in debt, while African log domination is rising stronger than ever. From Paris protests to the streets of Lyon and Marseille, the balance of power is shifting. Stay with us as we uncover how the fall of France is tied to the rise of the Sahel.
Yo, France is getting ready to collapse, and nobody's talking about this. And this is not me just fear-mongering. No, look. Fears of French collapse sound the alarms. French stock slides as Paris government faces risk of collapse. Timestamp there. France may need an International Monetary Fund bailout. Reuters, French stocks, bonds tumble as government faces potential collapse. Market Watch talking about the collapse. So what exactly went wrong in France and what's going to happen next? We can see that the public debt hovers around 3.3 trillion euros, which is around 113% gross domestic product, which is the highest in recent history. The budget deficit also remains stubbornly high, projected at 5.4% of GDP in 2025, with warning signs of persistent weak fiscal discipline pushing it closer to 6% without significant intervention. Now, keep in mind, their goal for their budget deficit is 3%. They're double that, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get down to that 3% anytime soon. So they need an influx of cash desperately, and they may have to turn to the International Monetary Fund to help bail them out. Because once news got out about how bad it really is financially in France, investors immediately started selling off in the stock market and selling their bonds off too. Now, it's important to note that France is the second biggest economy in the European Union. So the fact that they're collapsing means this is going to send shockwaves through the entire European Union. So France really has to do something fast because this is not good for the EU at all. So what options does France really have right now? The first and most important thing that they absolutely have to do is create their own version of what the United States created in Doge. They've already stated that they're spending way too much money and they need to cut back on that wasteful spending. So creating a version of Doge will help cut in to that debt to GDP ratio that's been devastating for them. Next, and as sad as this may be, they may have to take this bailout from the IMF. Obviously, it's not ideal, but in order to keep the country going, you may have to do something like this, but time will tell if they actually do. The last thing they have to do is a confidence vote. Since all of this is happening, they have to decide if the current leader in France is fit to actually lead the country out of the current situation it's in. If the rest of the countries in the EU decide no, he's not fit for the bill, he's going to get voted out and they're going to put somebody new in that can help with this problem. So France is on the risk of collapse, and it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with all of this. If you like news like this and you want more, make sure to like and follow.
Bad news for France. Emmanuel Macron plunged the country into chaos. The French debt exceeds 190 billion euros. And get this, 90 billion added in just 6 months. But instead of saving the French, Macron sends billions to Ukraine. Yes, to Zelensky, to try to defeat Vladimir Putin. However, Elon Musk did say, instead of helping Ukraine financially, technically, and militarily, help them negotiate peace with Putin. Because Russia is not a small country that can be easily destabilized. Meanwhile, prices soar, taxes rain down, and Total Energies, a pillar of the French economy, collapses. And the worst, it doesn't even come from a direct war. It all started when Africa said no to France. And then, Putin dropped a chilling sentence. I don't need to attack France. Its former colonies just need to distance themselves, and it will fall on its own. And guess what? That's exactly what's happening. Tell me what you think in the comments, and share the video widely. Wait, take a second to subscribe for more info.
Update. France's government is on the verge of collapse and the crisis is shaking Europe to its core. The country is drowning in debt, with a staggering 3.3 trillion euro deficit that grows by nearly 5,000 euro every single second. And it's not just France, the United Kingdom is also staring down the same path. Here's the part most people don't know. For decades, 14 African nations were forced into an arrangement that sent up to 80% of their yearly revenues straight to France. That deal kept France afloat for over 50 years. But times have changed. Countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and Senegal have expelled France, cutting off Paris from the very resources that kept its economy stable. Now, the fallout is massive. Companies are leaving France, unemployment is rising, and the state can't keep up with the weight of its own debt. The lifeline from Africa is gone, and with it, France's economic safety net. Meanwhile, the UK still leans heavily on Nigeria, but analysts warn that if Nigeria follows the same path and pushes back, Britain could face a collapse similar to France. What we're seeing right now is Europe paying the price for decades of dependency on Africa. The old system is crumbling and the cracks are finally out in the open. So here's the big question. Is this the beginning of Europe's economic downfall? Or can these nations survive without Africa's resources?
Imagine this. 200,000 angry French citizens flooding the streets, blocking highways, torching buses, chanting for Macron's resignation. Why? Because their government just announced a brutal $50 billion budget cut. But here's the twist the French media won't tell you. The deeper cause of this crisis doesn't lie in Paris, it lies in Africa. More specifically, in the Sahel. France is collapsing because it lost its grip on Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Without Africa, France is bankrupt. Without the Sahel, France is humiliated. Well, Paris, Lyon, Marseille, Toulouse, the streets are on fire. Protesters chant, Macron must go. A bus torched in Rennes, train cables cut near Toulouse. At Gare du Nord station in Paris, police fired tear gas at thousands of demonstrators blocking entry. 80,000 police officers deployed nationwide, yet still overwhelmed. Nearly 500 people arrested. Over 170,000 people mobilized in more than 800 protests across France. The Block Everything movement, born online, has become a tidal wave of anger sweeping across the country. And the reason? Austerity, cuts, sacrifice demanded of ordinary French people. Prime Minister François Bayrou unveiled a $50 billion cut, slashing pensions, freezing salaries, removing national holidays. The people shouted no. Parliament collapsed in a no-confidence vote. Macron scrambled to appoint yet another prime minister. But the anger only grew. And that's just the beginning. Because here's what France doesn't want to admit. These budget cuts are not simply about mismanagement. They are about the collapse of France's colonial empire in Africa. They are about the loss of Niger's uranium, Mali's gold, Burkina Faso's cotton. They are about the end of French domination in the Sahel. Keep watching, because it gets deeper. For decades, French presidents boasted that without Africa, France would sink to the rank of a third world country. That wasn't just a statement. It was an admission of dependency. Africa's uranium lit French homes, Africa's oil fueled French cars. Africa's resources filled French banks, and yet Africa itself remained poor. That was the Africa versus France economy. Paris shining, Niamey starving. But everything changed when the Sahel rose. In Mali, Colonel Assimi Goïta ended military cooperation with France. In Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré expelled French troops and reclaimed control of supply chains. In Niger, General Abdourahamane Tchiani nationalized uranium, expelled urano, and joined the alliance of Sahel states. These were not isolated acts. They were a coordinated rebellion against centuries of French colonization in Africa, and the results speak for themselves. The World Bank Niger report shocked the world when it projected that Niger will be the fastest growing economy in Africa in 2025, with an incredible 14.4% GDP growth. Agriculture is booming thanks to massive irrigation. Oil production has quadrupled. Uranium is finally under Nigerian control. While France is slashing 50 billion from its budget, Niger is rising. While Macron faces 200,000 protesters in Paris, Tchiani commands millions cheering in Niamey. France shamed, Niger triumphant. But there's something the media isn't telling you. France's $50 billion budget hole has a direct link to Africa. With the Sahel cutting off cheap uranium, cheap gold, cheap cotton, France's energy bills are soaring, its industries are weakening, and its debt is spiraling. In 2024, France's deficit hit 5.8% of GDP. Now austerity is the only answer. Yet the people are refusing to pay the price for Macron's colonial failures. This is where Niger sends the world a message. When Africa breaks free, Europe shakes. When the Sahel rises, Paris trembles. Like this video, if you feel what's coming is long overdue, and you won't believe what happens next. Because this is no longer just about the streets of France. It is about a shift in global power. The Sahel rising shows that Africa's fastest growing economies are no accident. They are the fruit of resistance. Resistance to IMF debt traps. Resistance to French colonization. Africa, resistance to puppet leaders. When Niger breaks free from France, France breaks down at home. Comment below, because the next piece needs your voice. If you believe Africa must rise, comment, Africa must rise. If you stand with AES, say it loud, AES forever. Now let us paint the contrast even more vividly. In Paris, pensioners march because their retirement is threatened. In Niamey, families celebrate cheaper rice, regulated rents, and free maternal health care introduced by the military government. In Lyon, students clash with police over tuition hikes. In Ouagadougou, young people cheer as Traoré opens new state-owned enterprises. In Marseille, unions strike against frozen wages. In Bamako, Goïta signs new defense pacts with Russia and Turkey. Two worlds, one falling, one rising. Which side of history do you stand on? And that's not all. The Sahel's victory is contagious. Senegal, under Bassirou Diomaye Faye, is following the same anti-imperialist path. Its economy is projected to grow 12.1% in 2025. Ghana debates taking back control of its gold exports. Across Africa, the message is spreading. If Niger can do it, why not us? If Mali can do it, why not us? If Burkina Faso can stand tall, then surely Africa as a whole can rise. But the question is, will France learn, or will it double down on?
What you have just watched is more than a tale of economics and politics. It's history unfolding in real time. France, once the empire that dictated times to Africa, is today on the defensive, cutting pension, freezing salary, and facing protests that shake its very core. And across the Sahara, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, a new chapter is being written, one built not on dependency, but on sovereignty and self-determination. Captain Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, Colonel Assimi Goïta in Mali, and General Abdourahamane Tchiani in Niger have sent one message loud and clear. Africa will no longer be anyone's lifeline. The explosion of foreign trade, the nationalization of resources, and investment in local industry are not just isolated moves. They are a coordinated demand for dignity, and it's working. Economies once more as fragile are now recording some of the fastest growth in the world. Meanwhile, France stripped off cheap uranium, gold, cotton, and oil face an austerity storm at home. In Paris, hundreds of thousands chant Macron must go. In Netherlands, family celebrating cheaper food and free maternity health care. In Lyon, students protest tuition hikes. In Bamako, new defense paths are signed with Russia and Turkey. These are not just different stories, they are different destiny. One falling, one rising. The world is watching, and history is asking, which side of this divide will you stand? The Sahel has proven something profound. When Africa breaks free, Europe shake. When Africa rise, the world must take note. And this is one of the beginning. Senegal, Ghana, and others are watching closely. If Niger can do this, why not them? If Burkina Faso can reclaim pride, why not the rest of Africa? The message is spreading and it's unstoppable. We give credit to the creator of the Stitches video that made this documentary possible. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe this new dawn of new African century, or is France capable of reinventing itself in this changing world? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to others who may need to hear this untold story. Because here at Find the Dots, the conversation does not end with the documentary, it begins with you.